Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to Pep Talks in the Morning. Today is Thursday, 16th of April. It's Felicia Holder, Chairman of the Progressive Empowerment Party, your host of this program every Monday to Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. We have a very informative show this morning for you. We're going to segue a little bit from the regular discussions that we do with our PEP members on current events, and we are going to have a discussion with two very well-known, prominent members within the PEP family. Mr. Kenneth Luke, who is the head of the PEP Advisory Council. Good morning, Kenneth.
Good morning, Felicia. Morning, Minoff.
Meyer, who is a consultant slash project manager. Good morning, Minor.
Good morning, Felicia. Good morning, Kenneth. Good morning, everybody listening and viewing.
So this morning, like I said, we are moving away a little bit from the regular discussions that we would have as it pertains to just interacting and discussing current events with our usual suspects or members, as you may know them. And we are going to introduce a discussion on education and economic diversification. I think these topics are particularly pertinent right now. Yesterday, we would have spoken a little bit on education as the ministry went on to make an announcement about postponing the SCA examination, and not just postponing the SCA examination, but moving the reopening of the school term to September, which in essence means that our children would be home for about 6 months since this COVID-19 pandemic has hit the globe. Now, for a lot of people, this means that their children will obviously not be in school. But there is the additional concerns that we spoke about yesterday with regards to the mental capacity of the students, um, the ability for them to learn all of that information in the short amount of time, because the school is being proposed to be reopened in September, and they are being told that they have to take an examination in October. That is giving them 1 month after a lengthy 6 month break to get on top of all of the work that they would need to memorize by rote in order to sit an examination. And for many who know the SCA examination, and we spoke in great length about this yesterday, the SCA, we here in the Progressive Empowerment Party view it as a child abusing exam. It's telling children at 10, 11, and 10 years old that they are sitting an examination that is going to determine the rest of their lives. I listened to a consultant in terms of social services speak to a reporter on TV6 last night. I listened to the news, and she more or less said the exact same thing that we said, which is that the pressure of the SEA exam is already one that troubles children. Now, with the additional pressure of not having been in school, being away from your peers for so long, and being put under pressure to cram an enormous amount of information, should the curriculum not be um, should it not be redacted, and should it not be changed and altered to suit the shorter time frame in which the children have to learn, that it is going to cause some level of anxiety, maybe even mental problems. We know a lot about suicide and depression amongst children who are unable to cope and deal with the anxiety and the fear that comes along with SCA examination. Now, like I said, the topic is about education this morning because we want to do a deep dive into what the PAP proposes in terms of education. And what we propose is, I would say, a multi-layered proposal, in that we don't just look at education, but we look at it from a very holistic point of view. Education, as Kenneth will go on to say, dovetails with social development, it dovetails with agriculture, it also dovetails with healthcare. This is very important because all of our policies are meant to work together. When we are potential. We talk about a potential from a whole point of view. So, like I said, we are going to dive this discussion because really a lot of what we have now as the current system, but I would like you all to understand what we could have under PEP or Progressive Empowerment Party education. Morning, mine, and this is going to be interactive, so I will be stopping you at different points. And I know if it's going to stop you, you're both going to play devil's advocate because the point is to get the audience to understand as much as possible what our education system could look like versus what we currently experience right now. Kenneth, over to you.
Yeah, morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Discussion this morning, as Felicia indicated, is about the need to reevaluate the current education system and provide remediation where necessary. And to start with, the objective of education is basically we need to turn out the future workforce. And we need to turn out a diversified workforce that deals with a diversified economy, which is going to be the next stage of the economy in Trinidad, because currently it lacks the foundation that would be in the education system to produce that diversification. We have a very broad, jump between the professionals in terms of medical and academic people and science against people who find themselves on the butt end of the society in particular. So what I'd like to talk about first is about value, because the observation is that there is a value ethos that's missing, or I'd say it's been damaged. Because usually everybody, all of us, are habitual self-evaluators, because we constantly think of ourselves in terms of any situation that we are in terms of how do you fit. This has to do with self-esteem, the image that you have of yourself, and ego, and the awareness of existence. In other words, how and where do we fit? With regard to self-esteem, what is noticed psychologically and from all the documents that we've researched is that those with self-esteem are taught to possess both work confidence and self-confidence. Work confidence is the ability to make work, and self-confidence implies self-respect and the ability to make work and make love. It's coincidentally curious that Sigmund Freud basically puts in the public domain, it's best when you can make work and make love, but if you can't do both, you'd better be good at one or the other. So in order to get to the elevation of value and the value proposition that our society faces in an individual sense, because it's a heavily class-based society, education, we believe, is where that value is realized and can be leveraged. So first of all, the PP believes that there's a need to move away from rote-based education to critical thinking. Critical thinking being the ability of children or students to interrelate in a critical and analysis fashion. Sitting an exam at an age of 11, 12, and making that exam determine life choice is it's almost akin to PTSD on these children. Some of them,
Can I just call it what it is? It is almost abuse to tell children that this determines your destiny, and if you don't do well, your destiny is probably going to be a very gloomy one, or if you do well, you're going to have a very sunny and happy outlook on your life, at least the majority of you.
Well, correct. But the idea is that what we have looked at, and we've looked at a couple of systems. We've looked at systems in Norway, in Finland, and also in Japan. And excuse me. And in combining or taking the best out of each, what we find is that our system that is managed by continuous progress of a child and being able to document that puts a very tactile approach toward managing education and education administration. Now, so effectively, what we have done is address something called adaptive curricula. Adaptive curricula tends to give us the ability to have the various propensities of children mixed in a group discussion. But I'll go back one step back to say that because the children start really at 3 and they progress to 5 or 6 to get to primary school, what you have is a situation where you're not forcing the children into learning ABCs and 1, 2, 3s and different things like that. They get that really, but on the periphery. What is focused is interpersonal activity. They learn to work together. They do building things. They build sandcastles. They take them on field trips and basically they interact as preparation for what's coming next, because they've already imprinted from their mothers and their parents, and they're moving now to education or an education opportunity that gives them the ability to interact. From there, they're then sent to primary school. Now, the Education Act in Trinidad and Tobago basically gives very clear indication, starting in Chapter 6, about what education represents to the Trinidad and Tobago public. From that age, 3, all the way through to secondary and post-secondary. So what we have addressed is the ability to take a system, a computerized, what's called a longitudinal data system that tracks the child and every movement of the child from the standpoint of 3 to 20. Now, in the primary school time frame, what you really begin to look at is to look at how they have learned from the earlier time and use that as the basis for measuring. And the measurement starts really at that primary school age and goes through to the time they sit this SEA exam. Now, the thing about the SEA exam is that we find that, as Felicia says, it's abusive from the standpoint that you have begun to separate the children based on what they have learned so far. Now, that learning so far is basically rote learning. And what we are trying to do is to put the children into a critical thinking dynamic that allows them to interrelate or use the earlier lessons to interrelate. And in groups, they learn where the ones have different propensities. Like, for instance, you'll have vocational, technical, and on the side of academics and science, you would have those people together. And they do class projects in a way that puts them collaborating, where the weak ones in one field, like for instance in vocational technical, will help the academics or collaborate with the academics. So it's an even level playing field for learning. Now, when you I would say it's kind of brutal to separate these children at the age where they are now. They have already begun the peer pressure stage where they are practicing what has been learned all along from the age of 3 to their current age at 11, 12. What happens is basically they are forced to separate into what's regarded as prestige. Prestige schools, the first choice, second choice, third choice business, tend to say that the others who don't make it are, the question is what? Less than prestige. And therefore, there's a lot of stress built up at that point in the children's life. And I refer to it as a kind of PTSD that follows them as they continue.
I was
Sorry.
just going to interject and say there's a stigma actually attached to it. Is I would say is greater than stress. There's a real stigma, and I'm not sure actually. I need to investigate if this still happens. But that separation can, as you mentioned, putting those who are more good with their hands and technical with the academics, that mixing so that they can each help each other, that that separation happened way before SCA. I remember primary school, and this was I was here to do common entrance, which was another version of the child abusing exam. And in that examination, not in that examination, but in that school system, you had the children separated in class A, class B, class C. And A was supposed to be the bright children, so the A achievers. The B was supposed to be the average children who were not as smart as the A achievers. And the C was supposedly the duncy head children, as they used to call them. Even in
Yeah.
primary, there was separation between who do all learn fast grades, do learn slow. Like, back now, that what you're mentioning there about mixing these, I don't want to say these smart ones with those who are learning at a slower rate, but actually mixing those who are more academically prone versus those who may have a different way of learning or different, according to you, vocational preference. It's a wonder that we didn't think to mix those two so that they can each help and complement each other as they go along. And that stigma, that separation, and that classification, in essence, it follows the child from standard 1 to standard 5, where they sit common entrance, as I did, or SE, all the way up to Form 5 when we sit CXC, because from there you move on to a different level of class versus what you're talking about here, which is a commingling of different learning styles and learning capabilities. I just needed to point that out because, only as you're seeing it, it became very glaring how institutionalized our class system is literally here in Trinidad.
May I ask a
Yeah, that's
question?
correct. It mirrors.
Um,
This is the issue. A child is born as a clean slate. The child comes along into the world and it is faced by adoption of values that the parents have. And we have to fix the value dynamic in Trinidad and Tobago, or attempt to do it. Of course, it's not going, we don't expect that it's going to be 100%, but we do expect that people are by nature self-reliant in that they understand that what's best for me. Now, if you do not provide the opportunity and options, what's best for me is based on what you absorb and learn, what a child absorbs and learns from their surroundings and their parents. And in some cases, the parenting is a situation, as you mentioned, that goes back into social development constructs and social development programs, which are sustainable, continually monitored, and so on. So just to get back to this thing about the longitudinal data system, a longitudinal data system basically tracks the child's performance in the school, but it also
may
puts.
I ask a question in between? Can I understand. Does your current system in primary school, if I got it right, you have 4 forms for years in primary school, and at the end you have an exam. And this decides where you have to go, prestige school or whatever. You said 5? But
5.
do you have, okay, 5. Are there any tests or in-class tests, intermediate little exams or whatever during this 5 years as well? Or is there only, you go to school 5 years and at the end there is the big hammer, the exam?
Well, there's normal testing, term testing, and so on that occurs that children are graded on, so that you can basically understand their progress. Okay. So that is taken care of. But what we are proposing is something that does not really involve testing, because a lot of times we don't propose that testing should occur in any serious way that makes a life decision on a child until they are later in the school system, and that's at high school time at age 16. So the normal testing and the normal grading will happen, but the longitudinal data system in our proposal basically tracks that child to the degree that the child must make a particular grade point, and that grade point in the class is cumulative and the responsibility of the teacher. The cumulative grade point of the school, now it has some benefits because on a national level, let me finish this thought. What happens at the school level is that the principal is now responsible for the grade point average of the school overall. It kind of begins to stimulate competition because across the nation, the same thing would be happening. Now, we don't propose to drop this on the nation in one shot. It has to be piloted and it has to be rolled out, and we have to be very careful about how we make sure that the transition occurs accurately and we measure those results so that we can begin a pilot rollout over a period. Now, while we do that, we have to make sure that accreditation objectives are met, even though some would be in one at any stage as we build out the entire system. Some would be in one way and others would be another. So that has still to be worked out, and that requires some assessments and some other things. But effectively, the overall proposal is to put the system into a place where you are focusing on children development, child development. And to do that, you must also have the big stick. To a degree, when I say big stick, is a big stick more like a feather. But it basically puts truancy and social development and a healthcare worker at the school. What that said, these are not visiting people. Sorry?
No, you go ahead. I'm going to ask you a question after you make this point.
These are people who are in school, tactile with the children. They get to learn them. Here's another piece. The respect for the school resource officer, who is a policeman, starts early. The respect for understanding how social services interrelates with a child who may be having a little issue starts very early. And because LDS is a real-time, on the ground tracking type system, what ends up happening is that if, let's say, Johnny is missing from class 3 days, and all of a sudden his grade point average would have dropped over those 3 days because they're constantly being not really assessed, but they're constantly being recorded. Their progress is constantly, and that is about participation, that is about acumen, that is about working collaboratively. It's not about learning 5 passages of Julius Caesar to recite in the class tomorrow. And that ability to do the creative thinking and analyze situations and so on is what is happening in the class. Now, you must have some of the normal type arts and sciences and stuff happening. So what ends up happening is the strong ones in science will help the ones who are more vocational, technical oriented. The strong ones in vocational, technical would help the ones who are more academically inclined or who may naturally shy away from working with their hands. So that is the perspective. Now, when you got that LDS tracking that way, if Johnny didn't show up in class for 3 days, what we end up doing is address that immediately. We don't wait to see the bad results in the end. Because of the tracking, you can identify potential hotspots or problems. Because 3 kids may have gone to the playground just to kick ball instead of going to class. I mean, I was kind of famous for that. But effectively, what you have is the social services people can go and talk to the parents and might find out mom lost her job. She is no longer being paid. So social services is there with what we consider a social safety net to put services in her pathway. And those services, they're referred to as an individualized service program, an ISP. There's a comparative one in social services called an IHP, which is an individualized hospitalization program, where it tracks, because sometimes it's a medical issue as well. So they put a set of services together that will allow the mother, who would be considered at that time, or the father, it could be a single parent family, or it could be a dual parent family, to be supported. And it's called an investment, because what you're actually doing is investing in that individual to bring them back to self-sufficiency. And I'm talking about training, temporary cash assistance, some maybe unemployment, and also supports for food and whatnot. And that person comes back to self-sufficiency, and it shows up in Johnny being back in school. And that's the end result. You have the child back where he needs to be, and it's a monitoring situation that looks for problems all the way through to juvenile justice, because the courts are involved as well. Once social welfare can hand off this a court officer, a court research officer, and I'm not sure they have those in Trinidad as yet, but once that happens, then it becomes either a criminal or a civil type of issue, because some children would get themselves into mischief that sort of, and then the juvenile record is sealed anyhow. So up until the age 18, there's really no record on this person. And that kind of monitoring gives us a good feel for the movement of the entire school population toward a diversified workforce, because very easily what we can do, if we roll up across the national perspective across all the schools, what we have the opportunity to do is budget accurately. So it tracks back to our finance. Felicia, I'd like to stop there for right now.
Was that, sorry?
I'd like to stop there for right now. I have a little bit more to talk about the integration with.
Yeah, because
I
have some questions, and I'm sure Mainov has some of his own. And my questions, I have several actually. My first one is that mention of social intervention and social services being able to swoop in and more or less investigate and correct and be so entwined with the school system, so the twin and working hand in hand. That is more or less a massive undertaking, and it's a massive department. If you can have approximately 20,000 students sitting an examination, and out of those 20,000, you can say approximately 7,000 fail out. When I say fail out of the system, they don't make enough grades, or they don't achieve enough marks to for any school at all, and some of them end up going into some of them, I don't know if they have that stay back system now. I'm sure some parents may opt to keep them, but no, actually they have this every child will be placed system, but the question is where they placed. Now many of them are placed, there is no investigation like you are discussing here. There's no intervention into why the child may be failing, and 7,000 is a lot of students when you think about it. Is it that this means that our social intervention and social services department is going to be a huge ministry, because it has considering looking into the lives and investigating the home conditions and the living conditions and the parenting conditions and the whether there's jobs, whether there's poverty, whether there's abuse, lots to do for such a large number of children. So is it that make this a super department?
Can you clear for me, Felicia, one thing? What happens to the failed students? Do they still go to school? Or what kind of school? You
Yes.
cannot let them run on. You cannot let them run on the street with the age of 10, 11, 12.
No. It's not that they end up on the street. They place these students, but it's where they're placed. They're placed in what we consider the bad schools or the poor schools. But again, they're placed there, and they have these. They failed the examination, but there's no investigation into why they may have done so poorly. And I mean, it's natural to assume, and we go on to assume that they just don't learn as quickly, or they're just not as smart. But I don't believe in anything as there's no smart children. There's obviously a reason behind why they are not succeeding as well as the others.
Right.
Okay.
Got you. Thank you.
So so essentially, you've touched on several things. One of which is where I started on the value. A lot of failures, exist because, as I said, a child is a clean slate. What creates the differences as they grow are the opportunities that are placed for them. So the idea of hope and opportunity, which is the linchpin of the Progressive Empowerment Party's portfolio of policies and programs, what we are basically wanting to do is value proposition, elevation of the value of an individual in a society. And how do we do that? We have to inculcate or restore, because there are a lot of folks in the country who think that they are not worthy. I want to be very careful saying this, but it is all about self-respect and introspection, but there are no supports for that. Right now, the observation is the supports that bring people back to psychological sufficiency are not there. So it must start with understanding the value of an individual. Now, I believe, based on the models in Finland, for instance, that the failure rate is going to be a lot less. But the policies or the programs rather, take account of the fact that there must be training. And this is broad-based training. It's not only for children who fall out of the system or younger people who fall out of the system. It's also for adults and parents. So at the same time, the education is, because every day is a school day. Every day you learn something new. Every day, and some experiences you learn with pain or expense, and some you get free. It is about the ability to recognize that. Because children react because of their curiosity and their nervous energy at certain times in their life. They react either positively or badly to certain circumstances. And in putting them into a mixture, like what we call the melting pot when I went to school, without addressing their unique abilities and focusing only on the ones who promote themselves well, I get a feeling that the dynamic right now coming out of this SEA is about 7,000 to 16,000. 7,000 to 16,000. What is that? That math's right? Yeah, 7,000 to 13,000, because I think we're estimating 20,000 children a year that coming out of this SEA. Now, if you have a harvest of agricultural products that looking like 30%, 40%, that's a failed harvest. You're losing most of your crop. Now, when you put those children into a diversified learning system, and the system evolves, because what we need is a workforce that has to deal with diversification. And we're talking about jobs of different kinds. Now, we're turning out UWI students who are excellent engineers. But the problem is they get into the workforce and they're stymied by people who wouldn't get out of the way and let these people practice their craft. And what ends up happening is the political will interferes with the technology. And we've seen that in far too many instances where people are frustrated and they keep quiet. They don't say much. They don't make too much noise because of the potential of the aura of victimization. And we know and have felt, many people know and have felt that in the society. But with regard back to the students, you see, in the Finnish model, 30% of children receive extra help during their first few years in school, first 9 years. 66% of students go to college. 66. The difference between weakest and strongest students is the smallest in the world. So we're talking about this collaboration as a risk mitigation strategy to ensure that what we get on the back end is success to the best degree we could get it. Science classes, for instance, are capped at 16 students. And so that what happens is that they focus on science. So you're already beginning to identify some differences because, as I say, they separate the children. But we believe moving towards that separation, because the separation really occurs in fourth and fifth forms, where you go general science, arts, and maths, right? So the learning skills or the life skills don't come into play. Your peers relate to you in a sometimes a very rough fashion. And I'm talking about the idea, and I'm talking about high school. The idea of children, and people refer to them as vagabonds. Those children are not vagabonds. They were born very, very clean. The problem is we have corrupted them as a society. And we have made these people, young people, feel that they are not worthy. So the whole dynamic is to put that worth back and that value back into the person, so that when these children who live in mixed communities, because the idea is to have the school in the community, so the whole idea of the prestige issue, nobody is non-prestige. Everybody gets to go to a school in their community. Now, if the parochial schools want to continue what they're doing, that's fine. But the issue in Finland is that 100% financing comes from the administration of education, and by extent the government, and there is no need for catechism class in school, or no need to bring children into what you would call prestige. Now, we know for a fact that there are certain people who end up in that prestige school that is a result of who my mommy is and who my daddy is. And the fact is, those children are replacing or stealing the places of other children who maybe, well, the children are not doing it, it's their parents. We had a case here in the US where a woman paid a lot of money, a high-profile movie person, paid a lot of money to get her thing into it. Well, she ended up almost going to jail with a big fine. Until such time as that kind of thing stops, we're going to be robbing these children of the future and robbing the country of the ability of that child, because in every one of them is that spark. There is no one child that doesn't have the ability to uniquely coordinate hand and brain and put it to some use.
And here I want to ask one of my second questions, which is, you're saying that all children have the same capabilities and the same capacity. It's just how it is explored and how much we allow these capabilities to grow, how we nurture it, you can say. And seeing as we have some children who may be more scientific and academically inclined as compared to those who work with their hands, etc., what about the plan for urgent skills and trades in terms of education? Because from early on, based on what you're saying, we're going to identify those who have a greater propensity for working with their hands and using critical thinking to build things as opposed to come up with formulas and mathematical, what's the term for it? But those who are more inclined towards trade and skills, etc., what would we put in place for them?
The children who fall out of the education system will be very minimal, because the education system takes care of all the propensities that a child could have. And because
No, these are the ones who fall out. These are the ones who, of course, we're going to keep all of them within the system, but in terms of those who are more inclined to taking with hands and stuff, as it is right now, and Sarana Ramlo is supposed to join us on this panel this morning. She wasn't ill, but she's still on viewing the live. Good morning to you, Sarana. We were discussing yesterday in our initial conversation around the topic, the fact that we have children who may not be that academically inclined. However, we're asking the question, does the does the current education system that we have in Trinidad and Tobago right now, does it meet the requirements of the economy? And that was a very great question that was raised, I think, first by myself, because we And we're going to talk about the economy after 9 this morning when we come back from the break. But based on where we want to be in terms of a country, in terms of where we would like to redevelop the economy, where area growth, etc., there's a great there's room for new skills and development that we do have right now. There's not much attention paid to people who may want to excel, in these areas, as opposed to the academics and the medical and the doctors, the lawyers, the carpenters and the trades people. What about them? And I'm asking, what in terms of the education system do we have in place to develop their propensity towards learning?
In my memory, when I lived in Trinidad, there was places like Serval. There were places that took care of some of those vocational. Actually, the whole idea of a child with a curious nature at certain ages, they're not being stimulated. They're brought to school, they're on a haphazard journey across the country based on preference of school or where they end up. That's number one. I have noticed, and I've seen actual pictures posted of children standing by the bus stop at very early hours in the morning, and when they congregate like that, the nervous energy kicks in, and the noise and the thing for children. Now, if we have a diversified economy and we have the nation on a 24/5 operation, which means that services are available around the clock, which means that children are in school during the normal school hours. But what happens is when they come home, one of their parents is at least at home, and the mad rush to go from one place to the next. Everybody goes that way, 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. Everybody goes that way, back the other way, at 5 in the evening. So breaking up the traffic that way will also mean that we have an opportunity to fix the roads. But to get back on what your question is, you see, we are not only addressing the child, we are addressing the teacher. Because in this model that we have adapted, the elementary school students, they get 75 minutes of recess a day. Now, that recess is not only go out in the yard and pick tamarind from the tamarind tree and buy doubles from Shaky. It is a structured recess. The other part about the teachers only spend 4 hours a day in that model in the classroom and take 2 hours a week for professional development. Now, to develop adaptive curricula for a variety of students in your class, you must enhance your ability to do this. And how we propose to do that is to provide the support for teachers to take this redevelopment. That translates to more bucks, because one of the statistics is that high school teachers with 15 years of experience make 102% of what other college graduates make. In the US, that figure is 62%. So there's a large disparity. There's 40% right there. And that means that if the teacher elevates their skill, they're encouraged to and rewarded and encouraged to do these adaptive curricula according to a national program. Now, teachers are effectively in this system given the same status as doctors and lawyers. Now, that says that we have maybe some demotivated people in the system, and we do have a lot of motivated people who are doing what they are supposed to do. But the impact in the classroom is sometimes raucous. We've seen it on TV. We've seen it in movies. And that I attribute to the nervous energy that we could otherwise trend into competition. Now, the competition, basically, I believe, is based on putting them into production streams, letting them understand early what production, marketing, harvesting, and the value of that in terms of Forex. So early, this is what I have advocated in these policies and the team that we work with. This is not a red bean in a cup with a piece of blotting to see how a little tree grows. This is roll up your sleeves and in the dirt, tactile agriculture at school. Now, the offset to that is, to me, is that school feeding can be augmented. That's number one. Excess from those schools can go to prisons and hospitals, because we know that the feeding in hospitals needs some tweaks. And what we are doing is teaching them agronomy. We're teaching them how to produce something. What's the value of that production in terms of ultimately its ability to earn forex? So this is a nationwide program that dovetails with another program, our agriculture policies, which have to do, it starts with home gardens. Because if you're teaching the children that in school, when mommy and daddy come home from shift 2 in the day at 2 o'clock, and we're teaching them about organic production and composting and so on, because our waste management policy goes heavily into composting. We have sargassum seaweed that turning up on the shores every year, and everybody saying, well, you know, this is rubbish, this is a nuisance. Well, I understand there's even a small company in Trinidad that chipping and drying and blending with soil to make, I don't know how they sell the product, but to make compost. So we're going into a thing where we're talking wellness and nutrition now. And it ties back, it starts at the school, and obviously the idea of a farmer in Trinidad and Tobago is not an agribusinessman. It's a menial task. You get your fingernails dirty and stuff. But this teaching is about getting them into the stream of business, entrepreneurial adventures or misadventures in some case, but effectively providing the opportunity for them to do it. And starting that early, what they be able to do is expel some of that nervous energy that ends up in fights on the school, on the street, right? And puts the attitude of some people that these children are vagabonds. They're not. They're treasure. And we need to be able to treat them more like treasure. So I'll stop there for now, because when you talk about the other part, there's some dovetails and cross mapping with some of the other policy. Because we intend to create a national social fabric that is much like a piece of cloth woven horizontally and vertically to integrate these policies. And as I say, from education, you can get all the way to waste management, or you can get all the way to food self-sufficiency, or you can get all the way to a productive national workforce for the future. So that's the basis of the thinking. There's some other statistics here that are really important, because teachers will be attracted to this. They say 93% of the finished graduates from the high school, 43%. Okay.
I found this on the web for 93% of finished graduates.
Did you hear that? That's Siri, sorry. It says 43% of finished high school students go to vocational schools. And that should answer the question about trending and the question about what do we do with those that fall out. Now, we firmly believe that less will fall out. If we take these systems, take the best of them, because there are three systems. They're Norwegian, and this is the other part about it. Scandinavian, we're talking Norwegian and Finnish, but there's also Japanese. The Japanese learn some serious lessons. And if you notice, Japan starts every morning, whether it's workers or school, with kata, the dance of the kata. And that is about the respect and integrity that you're putting into these young people at an early age. I remember we used to go out in the quadrangle and do, hands up, hands down, that kind of stuff. But they don't take it too far enough. We have people in the PEP who have experience in sports. One such is that gentleman sitting right here, Meinhof Meyer. Does have a background in that kind of thing. So my point is that it is kind of holistic, and it needs citizen participation. It needs citizen commitment, because we can't do it on our own. It takes many hands, make light work. So the
Indeed, Kenneth,
thinking is
and just to interject there, because we're approaching the break, and you did give us a lot of information there, and I mean, you even mentioned something that I neglected to mention when I spoke about the students may not be so academically and theoretically inclined, but they're good with their hands. I actually left out our farmers, who in the second half of this show, we are going to discuss in a little bit more detail, because they are very important to the channel. Right now,
is ticking.
based on the way that we treat and regard our farmers, we don't pay enough, or I would say any attention at all, real attention to the farmers and the importance of farmers in our society. And that aspect of including home gardens and encouraging children to be involved in farming and agriculture is so very important, because there's a importance that we have neglected in the past to pay to our farmers. I remember I attended, back when I was working in a company a couple of years ago, I visited schools that have adopted school in the rural areas of Brasso, in the back of Grand Couver there. And the children, from a very young and tender age, they would go outside, and their recess involved growing things like tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers. And these children, when you look at them, they are really great. And I'm looking at children 5 and 7 years old tending to their plants and watering them. And I asked the teachers, how come this is so integrated into your curriculum? And she said, not everybody, and this is just one individual school, they come from a rural community, and they understand that there is a percentage who would, of course, leave and go to the city schools and go to maybe the prestige schools, etc. But there are some who come from families of farmers who would like to develop that skills for the children, and they would like them to, especially those who are inclined towards agriculture. It's a skill that they would like to develop. Thinking, I wish this was something that was done nationwide. I wish it was not just an initiative of just one school. I wish it was something that all had an opportunity to experience. Just like when you go to school and you all have to do PE, and from PE class you get to see those who are more sports inclined, and those children would get picked for track and field and other sporting activities. It's the same thing we have to do to agriculture, especially when we go on to see the great role that agriculture plays in terms of food sustainability and food security and diversification, as it pertains to moving away from the oil and gas, which we have been so heavily reliant on for the past 50 odd years. Meinhof, anything from you before we go to a quick break?
Well, yes and no. This all, Kenneth, in general, this is fine and great. I hope everybody is aware that this will take some generations of students till this system will be implemented in Trinidad and Tobago. Another point which I would like to mention, several times I've heard the expression failed students. Coming back to the very beginning, Kenneth, when you started, you said something like, I just make a note here, the value. If you call somebody failed, this is not a value. Value comes with acknowledgement. Value comes with recognition. Even if they may not pass an exam or whatever, that is at least what we say over here. Nobody has failed a system. They are all put into some different kind of educational way to give them more education. Perhaps a different one. Not everybody can become a doctor, an engineer, or whatever, But as you said before already, we need people who work with their hands, who can do farming, who can do plumbing, who can do electrical works, who build the roads. So people are then qualified into that direction. Children, kids, students are then qualified into that direction. So I think the system needs to be improved in that way as well. That teachers, in the past, teachers were the big guys in the front and they had the big stick, and if you didn't do what they expected you to do, they knocked on your head or whatever. Teachers need to be motivators. Teachers, like you said, the children support each other in the Finnish system. Yes, they do. But the teachers are playing a big role in this system. They have to motivate as well. And if you only have a teacher as a big chief in front of a classroom, it will never work out like that. When I see this Finnish system, which you mentioned, we do not have a Finnish system here. Excuse me. In our primary schools, the children are for 4 years. They don't do any exam at the end. They have continuous testing, in-class tests or whatever during the 4 years, and at the end, the overall grade is given, and the class teacher, the form teacher, gives a direction to the parents what they would recommend for a further on education. From that time, the children are here going into a secondary education. And the secondary education right now here is more or less, what is it? A trinominal education system. So we have this, let's say, what you call the lower, perhaps even the failed ones. I wouldn't call them the failed ones. This is a basic school where they go to. People need to learn basic things. They need to be able to spell, to write, to read, to do basic mathematics. This is a must need, whatever they do in the future in their life. Then we have children who are perhaps a bit, further in the intellectual development. I don't know whether it's the right description, but it is like that. So a kind of a middle school, junior high school. I tried to look up the English wordings for the system. It's not always so easy to find the right translation for what we have in Germany into the English. And then we have what I would call then the high school. These are people at the end who, with the graduation of high school, can go to university everywhere in this world. What is the advantage of the Finnish system? It's probably more supporting the creative nature of the children. We are probably a bit more logical, more scientific, perhaps, I don't know. Plenty of things have changed in the past year as well. And I've seen a lot of advanced possibilities in Trinidad and Tobago as well. Your system, the Scandinavian system is great, no doubt, no question, but to implement it, you cannot. That's at least my question. And we have the questions to answer here as well. Do we implement it here? Do we take it over? We cannot take it over from A to B, from one day to the other. So we tried to adopt our system. During my time, during the time of my children, it looked already different. We had really grades after every year in school, even in primary school. This is not anymore the case. In the primary school, you get a general grade, a written grade, not in form of a number, you are A+, A- or whatever, but it's a guideline for you, for the parents, and so on. But all these systems, and we have this difficulty over here, fail or don't fail with the quality of the teachers. If you don't have the teachers to implement it, to bring the systems to life, forget the best system you have. So you perhaps need already now to start to educate your teachers, your future teachers, So it needs to start. If you want to implement that system, you have to start today already in university, in the teachers' education. Number one. Number two, teachers in a progressed age will never be able to adopt to the system because the Finnish and Scandinavian system is very much based on IT technology. Later on, the higher classes work with laptops, with iPads, with whatever, and the children are forced to work quite a lot. Not forced; they can work a lot at home as well, and they are promoted to work at home as well via IT system, via computer. If you don't have the teachers who are able to work with that, forget it. If you don't have the IT system, forget it. So this affords a bit more longer implementation. I'm pretty sure you will agree with me. Generally, the system is great, I agree. But as said, we had the difficulty here as well. We were under critics here. Should we implement it or should we not? We adopted our system. And I'm pretty sure we are more and more and more going into the Scandinavian, Finnish, or whatever system direction. A cold implementation, I think, will also in Trinidad not be successful. I hope you get what I mean when I say a cold implementation. So adopt the system which you have.
I get exactly where you're going with this, and just because we're approaching, actually we passed the time for the break, I do want to just here and some of us when we come back give Ken an opportunity to probably touch that before we move on to our other topic. But he did mention that this has to be a holistic as well as a phase approach, and something that he did not talk about in detail. He did mention it particularly with regard to us as in Trinidad and Tobago, attempt to do many things with facts and investigation, consultations that have gone nowhere. Because the big motivator, the big driver behind any system is a government that has political will. A government that is actually dedicated to making a change in the system. You said in Germany, as it is right now, you are slowly adopting things from various models, the Finnish model that you are adopting, but it's not fully there yet. And I don't expect that it's actually ever going to be fully there because your culture is different. The way you approach things would be different. Germany is not Finland, however, there are models and aspects of the Finnish model that may actually work for you. But behind that, driving that, I'm sure you have that committed to do that. We have been talking about the deterioration of the Trinidad and Tobago education system. Back in the 80s, we were regarded as one of the top in terms of education. Scholars were brought to England and to the United States and they're at the top of their classes. Now, I'm not saying that we don't still have bright students. It's not to do with the students like Kenneth said, but it has to do with the level of education. It has to do with the fact that education has not evolved and keep up with the changes in technology and the changes in time. He also mentioned the fact that you said that teachers need to be motivators, but in order for teachers to be motivators, they need to be motivated. And as of right now, the way we treat our teachers, I mean, I don't know if you have this in Germany, but we regularly have teachers here in Trinidad and Tobago striking and marching and protesting for something as little as wages. And these are the people who are responsible for molding the minds of our nation. They are responsible for the future generations of this nation. And if we don't treat teachers with the respect that they deserve, if we don't afford them to their knowledge and then we, in essence, saying that we don't have, and we're not paying attention to the we don't have a real investment in the education of our children. So that aspect of a government that has political will, and again, the Progressive Empowerment Party's plans, because we're looking at what we currently have now and where we want to be. It's a system that obviously has to be phased. You can't just introduce it tomorrow and the after. It has to be a phased system. It has to be supported by government policy. It has to have a top-down and bottom-up where you look at teachers, you look at compensating teachers, you look at paying teachers for this, because it's going to require a massive culture change. And I know Kenneth will have more to say on that. I don't want to jump into right now because we are running out of time into touching on this topic. But Kenneth, if you can concise your point yourself to what might, about 2 minutes, we will be back after a very short break to wrap up this discussion on education and jump a little bit on diversification. I am declared that the world's economy will actually contract by a negative 6.3%, which is a drop of 6% as compared to what they would have predicted just 3 short months ago in January. COVID-19 has come about and changed the way the entire globe operates and acts. But we will a bit more about that when we come back from the very short break.
Okay.
Antel is Trinidad's most reliable and technically experienced ICT company, providers of quality structured cabling, Cat6 data fiber and power cables. We also stock cabling infrastructure basket-type cable trays for server rooms and data centers. Antel also installs and maintains video security systems including cameras, alarms and electronic entrance locks for businesses and residential properties. Call Antel 674-1406 or 783-9250.
Trinidad and Tobago is in a crisis. For far too long, our people have been abused and silenced by our politicians and the business elite.
Just look around you. People are losing their jobs. Crime is at an all-time high. Our justice, education, and health systems have failed.
We all know the truth behind all that is wrong in our country. Corruption is destroying us. Billions of our dollars are being looted by a small group of business people that use our politicians to divide and distract us,
so they can take what they want, leaving us with no hope for a better country.
All of this is because we've never had leaders who seek the interests of the citizenry as their first priority.
I am here because I'm not taking it anymore.
I am here because I am not taking it anymore.
I am fed up of politics as it is in Trinidad and Tobago.
It is time we elect leaders with the backbone and the love of our people to go after the corrupt, evil elements in our country, hell-bent on serving their own pockets while we suffer.
And it is time that we as a nation take a collective stand against wrongdoing.
So we are making a plea to the nation to rally behind us.
Because our freedom of speech is being threatened by those who don't want us speaking out on these issues.
A man that I greatly respect is one of those leaders fighting for a better country. His name is Philip Edward Alexander, and he has bravely challenged the people and institutions that are destroying our nation.
To date, he has been threatened with 5 lawsuits for having the courage to ask state agency UDCOT on why the renovations of the President's house cost $89 million.
When experts in the field have estimated that that job should have never crossed 20 million.
Where did the rest of our money go? We refuse to stand by and allow any agency to use our courts to try and silence and punish Philip or any other citizen of our country for trying to seek the truth.
If you're fed up of corruption and want to be a part of real change, support Philip and the Progressive Empowerment Party in this fight.
This fight is not for him or us to bear alone.
It is a fight for you, our loved ones, and our friends.
It is a fight for the future of our country.
You can help by making a contribution to Philip's legal fees and help him and PEP expose the truth and shine light over the darkness of corruption.
Go to our website at peptt.com, click on donate and see all the ways you can pitch in.
There is hope. Our country can be saved, but we all need to stand together. My name is Felicia Holder, Chairman of the Progressive Empowerment Party, and I support Philip Edward Alexander and the PEP.
I support Philip Edward Alexander and the PEP.
I support Philip Edward Alexander and the PEP.
I support.
I support.
I support.
I support.
I support.
I support.
I support. I support.
I support.
I support.
I support.
I support Philip Edward Alexander and the PEP.
All right, we are back from that break. Thank you for sticking with us. Before we went to jump into our next topic, which deals with diversification as it pertains to us recovering from the COVID-19. Mynoff would have made several points with regards to the proposal for education. He mentioned that teachers would need to be motivated. The system would take a while to transition from what we currently have, and that there would be a massive amount of training and integration into the system, which I would have answered a little bit. But Kenneth, I'm also giving you an opportunity just to touch on that as briefly as you can, if you had anything to add to what I would have said and to answer what Mynoff would have asked before we went to break.
Yeah, I think the policy largely takes care of some of the things that Mynoff talks about, because we head off early. Some of the things that happens in education of a person, the whole idea of tracking sensitizes us to several things, because it's not only the data, but it's because these systems are very integrated with existing systems. So we don't intend to trash the whole thing. The idea is we want to take the good parts of some of these systems that the education department currently has and integrate them with this longitudinal data system. Now, I'm a IT program manager, and I've actually done the work of one of these LDSs, and I see the benefits of it. Now, we have, and I'm going to touch on something just because it's in my mind right now. We have been calling on this government to do something about this, and they are floundering because it would be difficult. We are not saying it's not a challenge to begin this. And as I said earlier, we have to be very careful, because some of these kids, we do not want to damage them or the aspirations of their aspirations or that of their parents, because every parent wants their child to be something in this world that means something and contribute. This is our objective too. And the fact that we talk about bringing the psyche of production, or the philosophy of production into schools is a very, very deep thing, because you see, one of the things about home gardens is you could only grow so much in your home garden. But across a community, there can be a variety, which leads me to something I saw that was quite curious yesterday, that the Ministry of Agriculture is now distributing 50,000 seeds to people. Now, in the rush to food self-sufficiency, which we've been talking about for 3 years, you know, some of those seeds at that point would have grown into producing trees and fruits and vegetables and so on by now. But the whole idea is that people are recognizing that we cannot depend on imported food. If you have a class in let's say that has pickings from their various home gardens, let's say, because we can't start farming on a big scale right now. It'll take a while to do short crop, long crop, medium crop. The whole idea, though, is that could be supplemented. Now, PP has an initiative called Pep Farms, which is a hub for anything grown in your yard. Now, this is something that I'm advocating, because food self-sufficiency begins with the individual, because you are what you eat, but it also says that you are giving yourself nutrition because you're using organic gardening. You're giving opportunities to these children to dispel their nervous energy, and at the same time offer them the opportunity to exchange at school. Now, exchange, buying is not always the thing. If kids are able to exchange what they grow at their homes, then you'll be able to stimulate some of that nervous energy and the competition, which could be leveraged into farm and garden expositions at a constituency, community basis, first of all, a constituency basis, and then it could be taken nationally, where there's recognition for what children do in their home gardens, so that they're getting food, they're getting the recognition, and they're possibly getting scholarships. And this is the public-private partnerships that we need to inculcate, so that what we get is that we have an entire structure that takes care of on an ongoing basis the production of food. It starts small, but it will build too. Now, these 50,000 seeds they're talking about, farmers need that kind of help too. And they need land acquisition issues resolved, which this government is failing to do. We have the issue of the deeds and the nonsense that people play with land. So it all ties together. But the thinking is not as holistic as that which the PP is thinking about. So the other thing that Meinhof talk about is teachers. Now, think of a teacher right now that in a class with a bunch of unruly children, or the children are jumping around, wanting to do other things. They're on their phone, they're on the whatever. And the teacher is forced into a situation where it becomes frustrating. Is a human being we're talking about, just like the children in the school. So we have to begin to have them blend. Now, one of the things about the model we are adapting. Now, I'm not saying we are adopting anybody's model wholeheartedly, because those models, the Finnish model took 50 years to evolve. But what we want to do is to take the lessons learned and translate that into what is unique about Trinidad and add that to it to make a situation for ourselves. And the way Trinidadians are creative, we believe that what will come out of it is something that we never even dreamed that we would get. So at this point, I want to turn my attention to teachers. Teachers are selected in the Finnish model from the top 10 of graduates in university. Top 10. Out of 6,600 applicants, they vied for 660 primary school training slots. That means there's a need. The teachers themselves see the need. So that's kind of where this tends to be going. And I don't want to say too much. Felicia, I'm not sure if you're with us at this point, but that's what I'm kind of focused on at this point. And to get this thing done, it's not going to be easy. And it's not going to be immediate. And the strategy has to be, how do we span it over time and do not create unintended consequences?
Exactly, Kenneth. And thank you for that response, Meinhof. I hope it means all of your inquisitive questions, but I think does touch on the aspects of what you would have raised, particularly as it pertains to how we're going to roll it out and the period which we are to roll it out. Overnight change, they like Kenneth tried to do.
That's more or less exactly the same what I said. It needs time. It needs to be. Maybe it's my wrong English, adopt it, you take over things which fit into your system and so on. We are on the same side, probably because of, as I said, German is my mother tongue. I'm perhaps not always using the nicest or rightest words, but I just wanted to make clear, this will take some time. Kenneth, we agree on that. The system is great for Scandinavia and Finland. We agree on that. And you have to make it, how should I say, work for Trinidad and Tobago in the same way we made it perhaps a bit work for our country. Cultures are different, attitudes are different, all that needs to be considered. The way is correct, the direction is right, fully agreed, and your system needs to be improved. Necessarily, you need to educate critical thinkers. You need to educate your children to be, well, to accept the role that they're a part of the society, and not they are out of the society. And this is forming your future society. This is forming the future way of Trinidad and Tobago, and we are with this perhaps spanning the bridge to the next topic. I don't know whether you want to touch it. This is forming the future economy.
It is, and
I need
it
to say
does
one more
roll
thing.
very quickly into just a second, Kenneth. It does roll quickly into the next that we look at right now, which is diversification and opportunities to grow for growth even outside of COVID-19. Kenneth, just before we move into that topic, you wanted to say something.
Quickly, what I neglected to mention is that we have an inclusive education construct that brings virtual learning to the differently abled. There are many children who cannot attend school, and I noticed the government system for learning management systems crashed yesterday. They have tried to put this in place, but I mean, you laughing, but I think it's a serious situation from the standpoint that the technology is something that affects everybody in Trinidad. The whole idea of bandwidth is the root of the crash, because if you take Flow, let's say, and put another 100,000 requests on it through at any one given time, besides the problems that people have with the communication itself, the same bandwidth is what all of this stuff riding on, and it's a size of, it's basically pipe. You could only get so much pounds or anything in a smaller bag. If you try to put 10 pounds of gobar in a 5-pound bag, it ain't gonna fit. And what they're doing, they're trying to reverse engineer something and rush to a political standpoint or a stage that says, look, we're dealing with this. It's like the seeds. But the LMS fell on its back because the planning, which is usually missing, and the implementation skill has a problem with how and that tracks back to our contractocracy, where the implementation stuff always ends up in the unintended or unintended consequences of additional funds. Somebody's getting more money to stop that crash. And that should have been planned, actually, because I'm an IT professional. I understand systems and the need to do scalability, for instance, which is one of the things that is necessary with these enterprise systems. So don't come and tell me your system crashed when you're trying to hustle to put learning management during this COVID-19 crisis in the pathway of children who are stuck at home.
It was, according to the Minister of Education, it did not crash. It was just down, which is, for anybody who knows IT and who has experienced a rush to purchase tickets when 10,000 other people were rushing to purchase tickets. It's just another way in the fight crash. It was rushed, and the site, which was built to accommodate up to 1.4 million users at the time, was down after 100,000 users, less than 10% of the capacity it was built to accommodate when 100,000 users logged on at the same time. I don't want to. I'm not even going to stick to that. If we are, and according to the Minister of Education, we are now looking forward. I'm not sure that meant he was looking back behind in the first place, but COVID-19 forced us to look forward. And we're now looking forward to what happens after COVID-19. And we're moving into that topic now because the world is expected to contract by -3%, which, like I said before the break, is percent of what was predicted earlier back in January. The world economy was actually predicted to grow 6.3%. We've now dropped, and we are contracting by -3%. And that is a cumulative loss of GDP of over $9 trillion. And to quantify that for people who may not hear that word much, which is trillion, that is $9 million. And how else can I say? That is a lot of money. And that is greater than the economies of Japanese. I say Japanese. That is greater than the economies of Japan and Germany combined. $9 trillion, which is $9 million. Companies that are reliant on tourism, travel, hospitality, entertainment for their growth, they are going to be experiencing large disruptions. Emerging markets and developing economies, they face challenges with unprecedented reversals in capital flows as global risk appetite wanes and currency pressures, while coping with weaker health systems, aka Trinidad and Tobago, and more limited fiscal space to provide support. I mean, this came straight out of an IMF that was released 2 days ago that created and actually pointed out that this depression that we are now experiencing is actually greater than the depression that we last of 2009. And it's about tourism travel. And for those who are aware, our tourism economy in Trinidad and Tobago, mainly Tobago, was already limping along with this previous administration, more or less nearly destroying the air and sea bridge. We had that fiasco back in 2018 where we had a very unreliable service. It caused a disruption in business between Trinidad and Tobago. In terms of investing in tourism, there has been little to no investment other than what we heard with the Sandals resort that was coming, which did not touch on the needs of the local tourism market, which would be the mom and pops and the villas and the private owned businesses, which do support and do prop up a large percentage of the tourism industry. We're hearing now that the government wants to invest $50 million in tourism at a time where tourism is not expected to rebound until after 2021. And we are now asking the question, in the midst of a oil price war between Russia and Saudi Arabia, where oil is now at one of its lowest points that we've seen it in a long time, $20 a barrel, what can Trinidad look forward to in terms of diversity and economic stability and growth in a period, like I mentioned, where the world's economy is expected to contract? And I have to point out that this is not just unique to Trinidad and Tobago. Countries like the United States, Germany, China, they're all going to be impacted by what we are experiencing now. But however, the strength of your economy and your ability to rebound from this Great Depression is very much found in the ability of the government to implement really quick fiscal policies and progressive thinking as it pertains to diversification. And I'm moving into this topic. I'm talking a lot because we are touching on the potential diversification in a period. Like I say, we are hit by a double whammy of COVID-19 and oil. And Kenneth, if you'd like to kick off the discussion on potential areas of growth for Trinidad and Tobago.
I'm going to start with saying that COVID-19 is a lesson in time, a lesson about the wanton nature of human beings, and the disregard that has happened both in the economy and the society. What COVID-19 presents is facing mortality. Everybody is in full view of their own mortality should they become infected and then eventually have some long-term sickness that ends in death. But it shows a wider thing. It shows that the interconnectedness of people and the interdependence of people. Because if I don't protect myself, I might infect you. And so, because of that, the post-COVID issue, which we do not know when. Now, for a long time, the government has been seeing tradingeconomics.com and some of these world sites that give you trends and so on. They have been seeing their stuff. They've been seeing where they're lacking. They've been dealing with IMF. They've been staving off certain people, but they have lent themselves to a Chinese Belt and Road Initiative that funds certain things in Trinidad. Now, when you funding when you're funding your normal costs like salaries and whatever through loans, you're already at a loss position. And declaring a $3.5 billion, I believe, deficit, and then adding to it later, and then dipping into this Heritage and Stabilization Fund, which, from my understanding, should be separated, but because of how it has gone, the heritage is right along with the stabilization being dipped into, which is something that many economists advised against. One such is a young lady, Marla Dukaran, who put a very good presentation out there on why it should not be done. Mm-hmm. But of course, when you are scrambling to cover yourself politically, what you are looking to do is to grab at any straw. And what they say about a straw is a drowning man will hook himself to a straw. But the problem is a drowning man, because I once went after a guy that was drowning and he almost killed me too. So this is going to be the unintended consequences of this wanton nonsense that's going on without really having a plan. So the plan, we talk about tradingeconomics.com, that has given insight into some things that really show us that there's a trend that showed, I looked at it a year or so ago, that showed that pretty soon what it said then is what's happening now, plus worse because of the impact of COVID. So, on to the diversification of the economy. Suddenly, we can't find data on Lake Asphalt. We don't know what happened with Bridgeman. We don't know what happened. It's a lot of things that we do not know. And we have been asking questions about consistently. And you do not get answers. It took a FOIA request to get the UDCOT issue to be put on the table with regard to the expenditure of certain buildings attributed to national pride. You must have a nation first to have pride in it. You must have a progressive issue. And this is why Progressive Empowerment Party puts that in clear focus. And in the nation, and the people in the nation need to understand they've given up their franchise too often to people who do not consider the track. Philip made a live last night about why they have these security contracts, or they have these people sewing masks all of a sudden. And why some of the people who are actually doing the sewing don't get the money. So I attributed this to something Chalana Birchwood keeps referring to, plantation national management. And this is a system of overseers. That's what's going on here. What they're saying is we do not have the capacity and the manpower to deal by disseminating these contracts at a level where the people themselves benefit from the funding. So what happens? The contractocracy gets the contract and disseminates it among the same people who are doing the work, who could have done the work and got the money anyhow. And so that in itself is a fallacy in governance. Because you are not trending taxpayer dollars that people are being asked to repay in the future to people who will otherwise benefit and therefore diversify the economy. So in every sphere that you look at, this is what is happening. And then there's the issue of tendering, which I believe they have made attempts to clear up, but it occurs to me because as a PM working on a large contract, my largest contract is a Medicaid contract worth $1.2 billion US, right? Looking at that from that standpoint, we know that we have budgeted X amount of dollars for what we call design, development, implementation, DDI. On the back end of that, and usually those are three-year contracts, three-year contracts with 2 option years. But on the back end, what we have is 5 more years of operations and maintenance. And if somebody were to get a hold of the budget and pass it to somebody else, what what you see is that, oh, we suddenly, the steel, oh God, we buying bad steel. We need to get better steel. Oh God, the concrete wasn't good. Oh God, so that involves standards. And the standards that are associated with. So we want to diversify our economy, but we don't observe the standards of the current one. And we haven't done the planning to give us a leverage or a jump point. Because, you know, inertia, if you look at an athlete who's in a race, in order to get off on that race, there's inertia backwards first to get the propulsion or the momentum moving. And this is true of what we are attempting to discuss here about the economy. So all the contraction that has happened, all the borrowing that has happened, all the giving these large contracts to large people who, and this ties back to our philosophy of, if you're doing something in my community, I want somebody work. You can't bring this big fella from wherever and say, he got a contract and he bring his own people and the people and the thing suffering. So jobs is another issue. How do we stimulate jobs? We stimulate jobs by creating opportunity for people to bring themselves out of the mindset, because the mindset is messing with a lot of Trinidadians. I look at a fella who you would consider a man on the street, and you know what? He have a very good appreciation of what the situation is, what they get, what they don't get, how they are perceived, and so on. So this is why I go back to value. And always we are faced with these transparent people. We disregard them. See, I using we because at one time I was like that. And I do understand now how these people feel. Because you know something, when you're in the forest, you can't see the trees. But I guess the value that I could bring is that I could see the forest. And I can select what tree I want to deal with. And what I have seen is that there's all this hubris. You know, you get into office, you didn't get into power. So we've been talking diversification and the oil. All sorts of things happen. And very large buckets of money are passed. And the people themselves, this does not filter to them. So just starting from there, there's that opportunity. And then we have the agriculture, because we must get to a position of food self-sufficiency. The idea of food self-sufficiency is to deliver your consumption patterns in the country so that people do not have to face imported goods at ridiculous prices. I see a Zabuka for $40. And that just don't compute. A soursop, $140.
In addition to that, Kenneth, there's also the added pressure of a forecasted shortage of food globally, and not because the food is not because we don't have the food, but because the food supply chain, there's a prediction that it can be interrupted if governments continue to enact policies such as banning exports. I believe Vietnam, which is the third largest exporter of rice in the world, they have stopped exporting to the rest of the world. Kazakhstan, which exports wheat flour, they are the largest in the world, they have stopped. Then there's also the issue of human resources, human capital being used to pick and plant in these fields. That is being disrupted as well. So, I mean, we're seeing right here in Trinidad and Tobago where farmers, their produce is going to waste. And if the global food supply chain is impacted, we here in Trinidad and Tobago who import a lot of our goods, I mean, I say this all the time, it's incredible. I bought garlic and I didn't believe it until I saw it, until I went into the supermarket and I saw a Chinese sign on the garlic that shows we are importing garlic, and I'm asking, are these things that we can grow here locally? But garlic is small in comparison to things like fish that we bring in from China. The global supply chain is impacted. There is the potential for us here to suffer as a result of it. And food security and food independence, particularly in a time like this, is something that we have to harp on. And I mean, I see, just like you mentioned earlier, Okay, it sounds like I have some police or ambulance or something in my area. But food independence, as we pointing out, and that just took the point straight out of my head as I heard the truck pass. It is very important to us here right now, and I see the Ministry of Agriculture. They started a Show Your House Garden initiative, and the prisons, the Prisons Association, they're now encouraging, or they started an initiative that I hope to see continue, but based on the propensity of Trinbagonians to and organizations to start initiatives for the pictures and the front page news that just fade into nothingness after a year, if so much. I hope it's something that can continue, but I'm not so positive. But we're now looking to put emphasis on systems, on processes, on food production and farming that should have been rightfully placed 10, 15, 20 years ago.
My point exactly. And that is because in looking at these trends that are coming out internationally about Trinidad and Tobago, the writing was on the wall 4 years ago. And the fact that there was a preference to sit down in front of the people in Sangre Grande and tell them, well, he's the Prime Minister. That is what the problem fundamentally stems from. So starting this stuff early in school, giving the children an idea of production, that takes care of those that are coming along. So what do we do about right now? So now the idea of food gardens, home gardens, because the farmers can't come up to speed in short crops and the diversity of crops that are needed to get a nutrition base. But it can come from the people themselves. Now that everybody has time, go out in the yard, dig some beds, put down some kale. There's this lady that sells kale at 1/3 the price of what it's selling otherwise. And she has a very good thing going with that. Apparently, she has a supply chain, a delivery, downstream chain. The idea, however, is it must start with the individual. They must commit to this. Because if we wait on government, somebody tell me the other day, national purpose, the government don't teach me that. National purpose comes from in your soul. You grow up kicking Pump-City and playing Pump-City cricket in the road, bathing in the rain, and Wassa tell you can't drink none. So there are some anomalies that stop Trinidad and Tobago, or the people in Trinidad and Tobago, from gaining the benefit of the natural resources we have. Look, one of the things you talk about was tourism. I made a proposal I put it out on Facebook about a brand Trinidad and Tobago, where just like how you could go on Expedia and get a package, you pay $3,000, you put on your card, and when you land in the destination, you get everything. The riverboat cruise, the resource, the ecotourism, whatever. These people have the ability, based on the individual. I have a hotel or a small hotel. I have tours. I have fruits. I could show them the unique cocoa that lives in Tobago, the honey that is unaffected from bacteria. So we already have the base. The base has to start from the people because they have to understand the value of what they are able to do and be able to deal with one another. That's why I bring up the COVID thing, the interdependence. People must learn that markets have to be interdependent. And so I am challenging Trinidad and Tobago people, not the government, because the government now trying to catch up. I don't know where they get these ideas from. I have my suspicions, but they're now playing catch up. And what we are seeing is the evidence of no planning. That LMS is clear to me. As I say, I understand that technology, and I could tell you why it failed. So they have somebody else now rushing to fix it, to pay them more money to fix it, unless it was under warranty. So all of this planning I'm talking about should have happened 3 years ago, 4 years ago. When you get into a government office, you basically have to assess, because you don't know what was there before. And with the slash and burn that happens on transition, what ends up happening, the money spent in one set of government does not transition the benefits of what they have built. So you get bad mind playing like the Couva Hospital. And you get roads bad in constituencies that didn't vote for you. You are the government of all the people. the well-being of that citizen is your responsibility. To take care of their economic, their financial, and their personal needs. They have girls in the bank can't get a loan to get a house. So my point is, diversification of the economy could come not from don't wait on the government, because they have a different agenda. They get in, and then they run their agenda, and they run the policies, and a whole set of unintended consequences occur. So our belief is that we're going to assess everything, including this economic diversification, because we already have some ideas, which I don't want to talk about here, but to put things at the disposal of the people through the hope and opportunity construct. Based on all the waste, there's savings, there's money that can be saved with these alternatives. But everybody going down the path, as I say, everybody whining to the tune, but they're not dancing or hearing the lyrics. And the lyrics been out there a long time. Sorry about the rant.
No. I wish I could have you rant all day, but we have less than 10 minutes, and I haven't heard myself in this conversation for the second half of the program, and that's terrible. Actually, I want to bring you in, Meinhof, because we're talking growth and diversification here, and we certainly run out of time in terms of going very in depth on this. But I know you have stuff to contribute on this, particularly in the area of tourism. And as I mentioned earlier, it is going to be one of the areas impacted globally. So just giving you some time to voice your piece on the entire topic.
Well, let me first say in general, whatever plans, my personal opinion, whatever plans you had so far for your economy, well, this sounds perhaps a bit too far, but throw them away. COVID-19 is crossing through all plans right now. The world economy is crashing. And believe me, the developed countries, if you read the IMF report, are coming up, I don't know, not even in 2021 again. This growth which they announce for 2021 is not based on today's economy, it's based on the downgraded economy at the end of 2021. So till we reach this status again today, this level today, we have 2022, 2023, 2024. And what they say about the emerging or developing markets to which you as Trinidad and Tobago belong as well, I think they are looking very positive into that things. Coming to one point is tourism, you said it. I think, excuse me, forget tourism for the next 5 years. Your tourism your ideas were based on what? Cruise ship tourism. Do you think people who has gone on a cruise ship, Americans, Europeans, Asians, Australians, do you think these people will go onto a cruise ship again in the next 2 years? That's a dream. That's a dream. After these terrible experiences they had on cruise ships. And the other thing is, where do they cruise then? They cruise in their home waters. At lunchtime, I watched the news here in my country. There is a big, big cry. Holiday at home. Don't travel abroad. And I'm very sure this will be the same in France, in Great Britain, in the US, everywhere in the world. The airlines are not flying. Airlines are close to bankruptcy. So tourism, well, I would say for the next 5 years, you can forget it. This is an advantage for you again. You can prepare your tourism industry. You can prepare your hotels. You spoke earlier about sandals. Be happy, be happy. Pray to whomever. You didn't get sandals. Be happy. You would have a ruin there right now. You have ruins enough already. And then I heard your Prime Minister promising 50 million or whatever it was for the hotels in Tobago. Gracious God, people, what are you doing? You're burning money. Give it to me. If you don't know where to send it to me. This is stupid. Coming back to the point of diversification. For the next 5 years, tourism in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean, I see really low chances. But you have the chance to prepare for the future. Yes, number one. Number two, diversification. You touched it, agriculture. Hey, I have been around your country so often and so much. You have plenty of space, plenty of area, plenty of land. Grow food, sell it, not only self-sufficient and you need to be self-feeding your nation. Grow it, sell it. There will be people who are waiting for it to buy it from you in the future. Do you think seriously, I don't know, Kenneth, you are in the US, do you think the US will sell food if they need it themselves? Never ever. We here in my country have the problem already. We say, why should we sell this now to a market anywhere else? We need it perhaps in half a year ourselves. People, come on, take care of your own things. First get self-sufficient, yes, and then sell it. The market will cry for it. Or you always, as you did already, run to China. And you will be later on, I don't know which number of province in the Chinese Imperium. But so agriculture is one thing. Tourism in 5 years products, prepare for it. You have time enough to uplift, should I say uplift? To bring in order to repair your infrastructure. We were talking about education before and we said your IT system crashed when they opened it for learning online. We spoke about the Finnish system, which is based a lot on IT and blah, and blah, and blah. So improve these systems, repair water. Come on, this is anyway the largest joke. 24/7, no water 24/7. People, do your homework now. And I'm very sure that although there is this oil fight between Russia and Saudi Arabia, the market will increase again. They have dropped the production capacity by 9 to 10 million barrels a day. So this will increase again. Yes, in 2, 3, 4 months, it may level out. So you will not be without any income. You have oil and gas still. So use that income wisely. Improve your infrastructure, make it fit, and then go into agriculture. And then coming back to the education system, build up, because I don't know which other natural resources you have, probably nothing. And to import steel, to make something out of it and export it again, come on, nobody will do that. So you have to create something else. Create Trinidad and Tobago as an educational hub. Create Trinidad and Tobago as a medical and health hub or whatever, like the Cubans have done. You can do that. You have the capacity. You have the intelligence in the people. Take home your intellectual property, which is in the brain of the people. Bring them back home. But you don't bring them back if there is a hole in the street, if they don't have 24/7 water, if they don't have a proper internet connection. Do your homework, and that is the start of the diversification. Excuse me, Kenneth, you are right. All these things with Red House corruption and here and there and so on. Follow that, excuse me, parallel, yes, because you can collect probably some money. Perhaps a lot of money, I don't know. That's not the point, but concentrate on the future. Sometimes, may I criticize? Sometimes I think Trinities are too backward is not the right word. They look too much back. They only think if we would have done, if that would have been, if it's over, if it's yesterday. Only looking backward is not good. Look into the future. What is your future? Create the society and the country as you like to have it now. And I'm very sure this old parties, the usual parties which you have, the governments which you had and have right now, I think COVID is a unique chance that things change. Because not only the normal way because people have learned something else is there. Money is not everything anymore. So they start to think different everywhere in this world. And I'm saying something very dangerous now. Everybody criticized Trump. I did it as well. America first. I think what we all have learned and what we all learn right now, every country is in a certain way saying, my country first right now. This starts with a very simple thing. We all countries in the world have noticed one thing. We were relying on Chinese medical supply, on Chinese mask supply. And we have learned one thing over here in Europe and in Germany as well. We never want to go into that dependency again. So you should do the same. So Trinidad and Tobago first.
Agreed with you there, Meinhof, and thank you very much for that contribution. We are absolutely out of time for this show. I know we spent a lot of time on education, maybe not enough time on diversification, because there's so much more that we can talk about. And just piggybacking off of what you said, Meinhof, it is the time to look forward. The Chinese proverb is that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now. And it is a very rare coincidence, and I have to call it maybe, it's a blessing in disguise that COVID-19 has hit at a point where Trinidad and Tobago is due for, constitutionally for an election, a general election later down in September this year. We are looking forward, and I see towards.
May I add one thing? Take care that this election will take place, and not that COVID-19 will be used as an excuse to postpone or whatever. Take care that these elections take place.
Unless there is a complete, unless there is a reason of the election, don't anticipate happening. Even if we postpone it, it is still supposed to happen. Even if it moves into 2021, as Kamala would have set the precedent to have an election 3 months or is it 6 months after it was due, it's still due. And it is a time, again, with everything that is happening in the world, with everything that is happening in terms of diversification, we may be forced to diversify in ways that we only dreamed about before, but may have to put into implementation now. With everything that is happening, like you said, it does present a ripe opportunity for change, for progress. And Trinidad and Tobago is looking on. They're looking on to shows like these. They're looking to new political options that are not just talking the same mode, that are talking forward thinking, that are talking on things that we spoke this morning: food self-sufficiency, food independence, food security, talking about diversification. We did not even get into medicinal marijuana, which is a massive area that we can be capitalizing on. The fact that we are letting countries like Canada and Jamaica overtake us in this area is a sad shame, because we have the capacity to be a global player. We have the capacity to be a global player in agriculture, exporting the avocados that we are paying $41 here for locally, that countries would pay massive for. Mexico alone, their economy is benefiting very greatly from the exportation of avocados, which many countries use for guacamole, etc. We have some areas of Lake, which Kenneth mentioned, that none of us have any idea what that money is going into, where is it going, who owns it, how much we can possibly earn from it. The potential is there, Trinidad and Tobago. We just need a government that is focused on harvesting all of the potential that is available here in Trinidad and Tobago. Tourism, like Meinhof mentioned, it's celebrating like it would have or like it should for a couple of years to come. Other experts have different opinions, but the fact remains that COVID-19 has changed, the world has changed how we operate, and it is time for us.
You stop.
To the
You stop.
Frozen.
Kill the background programs. Yep.
Pardon?
You
Hello?
were frozen.
Yes, you are back.
You were frozen.
Am I okay? I think my video is frozen, but my audio is okay. Like I was just saying,
No, it's
in
okay.
conclusion, we are in unique times, and I think this is the perfect time for forward-thinking people like yourself, Minov, like you, Kenneth, like all of the member leadership and the brainchild behind the Progressive Empowerment Party to not only step up and show what we have to offer, but to give Trinidadian, Trinbagonians the opportunity to see what a real progressive and advanced country could look like. And like I said, we are completely out of time. Kenneth, any quick closing remarks? And you please keep it under 30 seconds because we have to wrap up now. We're really past the time to close off.
Yeah, my only thing is the Bible says there's a time to live, a time to die, time to reap, and a time to plant. Now, post-COVID, we're talking about diversification. Now is the time to plant a plant. And if people don't do that, and if people don't, they will suddenly find themselves like the Venezuelans or neighbors next door who were looking into really awful sources of food. Food being the I guess the fuel to good health, and we know what healthcare is like in Trinidad, and we do not want to have that occur. So plant a plant now, plant later, plant tomorrow, plant the day after, so that you could, even if you're exchanging your things over the fence with your neighbor next door, everybody's on the same kick. Cussing at the government has been useless so far. It is clear that it depends only on the people. I think that's about 30 seconds. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Minov, I'm going to take your last remarks as your closing remarks. I'm sorry we did not have more time to go and do a deep dive into everything that we would have discussed today. But Trinidad and Tobago, thank you very much for staying with us. It was an informative episode of Pep Talks in the Morning. Tomorrow we would be joined by some of our caretaker for Labrie, our caretaker for Chaguanas East, as well as he is the leader of the Central Hub, and our deputy party organizer, Michelle Davis, will be joining me again tomorrow on Friday. Like I said, thank you for sticking around and being informed by us. Thank you for choosing us as your option to listen to in the morning. During this period of social distancing, isolation, and quarantine, let us always remember to stay together by staying apart. Bye.